Billionaires don't need to own the government. If they own the platforms people speak on, the housing people rent, the media they watch, the data companies depend on, and the AI systems shaping the future, do they really need a throne? At some point, wealth stops being money. It becomes power, not because billionaires wear crowns, but because everyday life starts moving through systems they control. You don't need to officially rule a country if people depend on your systems to work, borrow, sell, speak, or simply be seen. Welcome to the Financial Secrets, where money, power, and history collide. This isn't about whether rich people should exist. Inequality is as old as civilization. The real question is what happens when private fortunes become large enough to shape public life. A millionaire is rich. A billionaire can become an institution. Someone worth $100 billion is almost a private political actor with a balance sheet. In 2025, Forbes counted more than 3,000 billionaires worldwide, holding over $16 trillion in combined wealth. At that scale, we're not talking about private jets anymore. We're talking about private power that can start to resemble a state without a flag. History has seen versions of this before. In ancient Rome, elite families accumulated land, debt, and political offices. Their wealth wasn't separate from power. It was power. During the Gilded Age, Rockefeller, Carnegie, Vanderbilt, and J.P. Morgan built empires in oil, steel, railroads, and finance. They didn't just compete in markets. They shaped the markets everyone else lived inside. Today's aristocracy doesn't always live in a castle. Sometimes it wears a hoodie, owns a platform, and calls itself innovation. Instead of knights and tax collectors, we have subscriptions, platform fees, rising rents, algorithms, and essential systems controlled by people the public never elected. Modern political influence rarely looks like cash under a table. It's campaign money, lobbying, think tanks, media influence, foundations, and access. The point isn't that every politician is bought. It's that extreme wealth can shape what politicians fear, which ideas sound serious, and which policies are dismissed before the public ever gets a real debate. Real power isn't just winning an argument. It's deciding which arguments are allowed to sound reasonable. People still vote. But housing policy bends around banks, developers, and investors. Healthcare bends around insurers and pharmaceutical companies. Climate policy collides with powerful energy interests. Democracy still exists, but the range of real choices can shrink. People choose who manages the system. Ownership quietly shapes what the system is allowed to become. Then come the toll gates. Housing becomes an asset class. Education becomes debt-financed access. Healthcare becomes a billing maze. Software becomes a subscription. Digital platforms become the roads of public speech. And AI may become the next major gate. If businesses depend on private AI to write, code, design, analyze, advertise, and automate, companies controlling the models, chips, cloud systems, and data centers aren't just selling software. They're controlling access to economic capability. The modern toll booth isn't always on a highway. Sometimes it's rent, interest, a platform fee, an algorithm, or a login screen. You rent from an asset owner, borrow for education, depend on an employer for income, speak through private platforms, work inside algorithms you can't negotiate with. You still live under public law, but more of your daily life happens under private rules. Rules that can change with an update, a price increase, or a suspended account. You clicked I agree. Modern democracy's saddest little button. AI makes this even more serious. It may become a basic layer of the global economy. Whoever controls the leading models, chips, cloud systems, and data centers may control a huge part of future productivity. The question isn't whether AI will be powerful. It's who owns that power. Then there's billionaire philanthropy. And yes, it can do real good. Research, vaccines, education, climate projects, public health. But there's an uncomfortable question. Who decides which problems matter? If someone builds an enormous fortune through systems supported by society, then returns part of it through a private foundation, the public may receive help. But the public doesn't get a vote. The problem isn't generosity. It's when generosity starts replacing democracy. Slowly, the public interest becomes negotiable, while billionaire interests become structural. Protect asset prices. Protect investor confidence. Protect corporate margins. Protect innovation. But when ordinary people ask for affordable housing, better wages, or health care, they're told to be realistic. Funny how realism often means ordinary people accepting less while concentrated power keeps what it already has. This is where capitalism can shift from competition toward dependency. Democracy doesn't disappear. It becomes decorative, still visible, still fought over, but increasingly unable to touch the ownership structure underneath. And eventually, people notice. When everything feels owned, rented, subscribed to, tracked, and controlled by distant institutions, trust begins to collapse. Some anger can create reform, labor organizing, antitrust action, campaign finance reform, stronger public investment. But anger can also turn darker. Conspiracy theories, scapegoating, extremism, strong men promising to break the system while quietly rebuilding it around themselves. If people believe voting can't change their lives, they stop trusting votes. If laws protect wealth more reliably than citizens, they stop trusting law. Not because people suddenly hate democracy, but because democracy starts feeling like customer service for a system nobody elected. So what happens if billionaires own everything? Probably not instant dictatorship. The first stage is quieter. People still vote, still speak, still shop, still choose between products and platforms, but the systems shaping their lives are owned by people they cannot remove. And that's why this isn't really a story about success. It's a story about sovereignty. Who gets to decide the rules of ordinary life? Citizens? Or the people who own the systems citizens depend on? Who decides whether housing is shelter or an asset class? Whether speech travels or disappears? Whether AI raises living standards or concentrates power? Markets can create extraordinary wealth, but when ownership becomes too concentrated, markets can stop producing freedom and start producing rulers. Not rulers with crowns, rulers with platforms, portfolios, foundations, infrastructure, and access. Financial freedom begins with seeing that clearly, not because every billionaire is evil, not because every company is bad, and not because markets are useless. But if you own nothing, rent everything, borrow constantly, depend on platforms, and live under rules you cannot influence, your freedom becomes conditional. You can choose the product, the subscription, the employer, but you may never get to choose the structure itself. If billionaires own everything, what comes next isn't simply inequality, it's rule through dependency. History shows that societies can survive inequality. What they struggle to survive is the moment inequality becomes sovereignty. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.